Alright folks, today we're diving into Frostpunk 2, a game that drops you into a post-apocalyptic world where only a few thousand souls are left scraping by in absolutely brutal conditions. It's cold, it's bleak, and trust me, it's tougher than a week-old scone. But fear not, I'll be guiding you through my top tips, especially on how to keep all the factions loyal to you, which I reckon is the key to surviving this frosty nightmare. After countless hours of gameplay, and let's be honest, quite a few spectacular failures, I've discovered the trick is all about mastering the art of manipulation. You've got to play nice, chat with the communities, and get them on your side. If you can manage that, you'll be golden, or at the very least, not frozen. So let's jump in and get started. So let's kick things off by talking about something absolutely essential, the hospital. In Frostpunk 2, managing illness is critical for keeping your city running. As disease spreads, and trust me it will, you'll see workers dropping like flies due to the freezing temperatures or other nasty ailments. At its worst, you could have up to 10 to 15% of your workforce out of action. And without your workers, your entire city's efficiency starts to crumble, especially in the districts, which are a brilliant new addition to the game compared to the original Frostpunk. So, setting up a hospital early on is a no-brainer to avoid this disaster. Now, let's dive into the research tree. One of the most important elements in the game, it's split into several sections, each vital for different aspects of survival. You've got resources for exploring Frostland, infrastructure for developing your city, and more. Early on, you'll naturally want to focus on keeping everyone alive by meeting immediate needs, but Frostpunk 2 throws a few curveballs your way. You'll often have to jump between different branches of the tree to adapt. And that, mates, is what I'm showing you right now. The tension is rising. In Frostpunk 2, tension will marginally increase with each research decision you make. So every time you go to research something, expect the tension to climb a bit higher. And here's the kicker. You'll be navigating this constant tug of war between different factions. Each one wants you to take a different approach to city development, and it's up to you to balance their demands. In my city, I've got up to 5 societies coexisting, all with their own agendas, which means I'm often faced with 5 different options on the table. Sometimes it feels like I'm running. One key metric you'll manage in Frostpunk 2 is squalor, and it can spike for all sorts of reasons. The best way I found to reduce it was by researching and building a moss filtration tower. One tower is usually enough, but you can always add more if needed. But here's the catch. While it lowers squalor, it also raises tension. Why? Some factions, like the Foragers, are fine with it, but others aren't too thrilled. So you'll need to balance that tension as you make decisions for your city. At the start of the game, you'll quickly notice that each faction wants you to pass different laws, and often, only 1 or 2 factions will support any given law. They tend to contradict each other, which makes things tricky. The key here is consistency. Balance the needs of the factions while keeping an eye on trust and how you want to develop your city. The best approach is to carefully navigate between the factions. If you manage that, you'll be on the right path towards taking on the captain role. So guys, if you want to succeed in Frostpunk 2, the rules section is where it all begins. The most important thing for successful gameplay is unlocking guided voting. This is your top priority. Get it in place ASAP, because it lets you skip all the messy negotiations with the factions. No more running around trying to please everyone. Just guide the votes your way and move on. I learned the hard way in my first run when I tried to be the nice guy, negotiating with every faction like a politician. Spoiler alert, it didn't work. I missed a few tasks, and before I knew it, the city was in shambles. But with guided voting, you can take control and keep things moving smoothly. Plus, it unlocks the Bureau de Propaganda, which is an absolute must to keep tensions low. Honestly, it's like having a chill out button for when things start heating up. Let's take this New York model as an example. I've got 52 delegates backing the law, with only 35 against, and it's supported by 2 factions. So, voting is a breeze here, but there's always more fun to be had. Now, in this case, the New Londoners and stalwarts are digging in their heels, refusing to negotiate, while the Frostlanders are at least partially open to talks. Sure, I could sit down and try to win them over, but why bother when there's a sneaky trick up my sleeve? Here's the funny part. You can actually raise your standing with opposing factions using a bit of clever manoeuvring. All you've got to do is pass a law that one faction supports, then immediately promise the opposing faction that you'll pass a completely contradicting law in the next session. Of course, you need to be sure you can pull it off, but that's where guided voting comes in handy. In doing this, you'll be racing up the standings with both factions, playing them like a pro. Let's give guided voting a try. As you can see, I'm at the "you are accepted" level. While it's not the best outcome I've had in the game, it's still fine. I managed to pull in support from 61 delegates, with only 6 remaining hesitant. So, even though it's not perfect, it's enough to push the law through successfully, and that's what matters. Before you go to vote, always check what the factions want from you. It could be a new law, a new research project, or repealing a law that their opponents passed. Understanding their demands is key. Sometimes you'll be asked to fund a project, but in my experience, it's usually a waste of heat stamps with only a slight impact. So, the best strategy is to carefully review their requests and push forward the initiatives that matter most, especially research, which is by far the most valuable investment. Anyway, whenever you're in a bind, you can always rely on your secret police to improve your standing with the factions. Keep them happy, and you'll maintain control with less effort. So, in this instance, we've officially eliminated the Pilgrims, moving them out of New London and relocating them to Windward Moor. This means I can now declare victory, having completed my scenario. But as you can see, this game has been a tense one, and almost all is in red for me. The only thing that kept me afloat was my Bureau of Propaganda, which managed to keep the tension around 50%. Notable, yes, but far from a disaster. In your first few tries, you'll probably end up with tension levels high enough to make you sweat. Ironic in this icy wasteland, I know. But no worries, your well-upgraded generator will keep the chill at bay, and with outposts bringing in resources like oil, or whatever else you manage to scrounge up, you'll have stockpiles for days. Plus, you'll most likely have a ridiculous number of workers twiddling their thumbs, just like I did with over 11,000 doing absolutely nothing. Honestly, at one point, I considered starting a medieval bowling league just to keep them busy. With my city's population growing a whopping 92%, it felt like I was running a post-apocalypse version of SimCity. The upside? It's a great way to chase some of those big achievements, like hitting 50,000 citizens. Just keep slapping down housing districts and watch your city turn into a bustling metropolis with plenty of idle hands. Now, let's dive back into the game mechanics. You'll face plenty of important decisions throughout Frostpunk 2, but one of the most crucial is the fate of Winterholm. You'll need to choose whether to salvage the city and bring the cause back to New London, or to settle Winterholm itself. In my first example, I'll show you what happens when you salvage the city, and in the second, we'll explore the outcome of settling there. This is a pivotal choice that completely alters the rest of your gameplay, so it's worth considering carefully. As another key insight, let's talk about salvaging Winterholm. In this scenario, you need to transfer resources from New London to the Winterholm ruins to extract the cause. After experimenting with different approaches, the best strategy I found is to focus on building the extraction districts as quickly as possible, expanding them to maximize efficiency. You'll face rising tension between 2 opposing factions, who will push you to build either a mechanical factory or surveillance towers. My advice? Skip these distractions. Instead, prioritize extracting the cores fast, without even bothering with housing districts. The gas outbursts make it impossible to stay long-term anyway, so the quicker you can salvage the cores and leave, the better. It's crucial to start frostbreaking and building extraction districts as early as possible. Make sure you're frostbreaking in both directions since the cores are scattered on both the left and right sides of your city. The key here is speed. Frostbreak. Extract the cores and get them back to New London as quickly as you can. That's the path to a happy life for your city. You'll soon be hit with a request to build an automated workforce factory, which will cost you another 100 heat stamps, 1 core, and an additional 1,600 workers, plus oil. The factions are pushing for mechanical factories because of the rising gas levels. They'd much rather have Tesla robots working in these dangerous conditions than risk their own lives. Honestly, I get it. But here's my advice. Skip the distractions and focus on extracting those cores. Once you start the extraction process, the rest will sort itself out. Eventually you'll leave the city and all their demands and concerns will be a thing of the past. Now, here's a little hint from me. When it comes to transporting goods between your outposts or cities, you've got a couple of options. Sure, you can go with the usual tunnels, but honestly, that's a bit like choosing the slow route on a ski trip when the ski lift is right there. Instead, invest in skyways. They're like the winter sports cabins you see in the Alps, with all the happy skiers and snowboarders, like me, whizzing down the slopes. Skyways can carry way more goods than you'll probably ever need, and they're faster and more efficient. You'll save on heat stamps, and they extend further than tunnels too. So don't be stuck in the past with basics. Think of it like upgrading from a rickety old snowplow to a shiny new snowmobile. Choose the skyways, and watch your goods zip through the cold faster than ever. Now this is where you really start to feel like a proper ruler. Once you've built prisons and shipped out any opposing factions, you'll have to decide the fate of detainees during the civil unrest. One possible scenario even lets you avoid a full-blown civil war, so keep that option in mind. In my case, when I moved a faction out to Windward Moor, I had to build them a windshield to protect them. Why? Because they were practically living on a frozen, desolate wasteland with nowhere to hide. I mean, I felt like I was sending them off on some doomed winter camping trip. Frosty plains, no shelter. All they were missing was a tent and a good luck sign. But hey, at least I gave them a windshield. That's what you call generous leadership. Let's take a moment to breathe from all the drama of moving parts of our community to the icy wilderness. Now, as you can see, I've got 4 factions here, all loyal and devoted to me, which is exactly how you want it. They even ran a campaign on my behalf, and the best part? You can use this devotion to squeeze out a few extra heat stamps in each housing district. It's a win-win. They're happy, you're stocked up, and everyone's living their best, albeit chilly, life. What's really great about having devoted factions is that it keeps them on board with all your decisions. You can focus on the 2 opposing factions that always seem to be squabbling at either side of the tension meter, and use your captain authority and secret police to keep them in line. Want to pass a law? You've got it. Want to stall one forever? No problem. And as captain, you can promote both opposing factions at the same time without causing conflict. It's all about happy rule, folks. The more devoted they are, the better they'll function. And the best part? You can get the most radical members enlisted in the militia, keeping them under your control. You'll have a loyal community that grows over time, and even better, you can get free resources like hit stamps, prefabs, or even get your ill workers cured for free, all without hospital bills. And that, my friends, is how you rule a city smoothly with a smile. I, Captain, live forever. So, moving on, once you've got everything in place and a stable supply sorted, you can support the factions with funds. But don't expect miracles. It'll only give a slight boost to your standing with them. Now, here's where it gets fun. If you've got 2 opposing factions, you can grant agendas to both sides during each session. They'll often propose contradicting laws, and as captain, you'll get 100% support either way. It's like taking both ends to the middle. You'll be milking both sides for all they're worth. So here's the highest level of support you can aim for. You are revered. When you reach full loyalty, you won't need anything like guided voting. If you're in this state, anything you propose is automatically accepted by the delegates. No fuss, no hassle. Couldn't be nicer, right? It's as if they're all nodding along, happy to follow your lead without a second thought. You'll know if something's going wrong from the upper dashboard. Right now, as you can see, my squalor level is creeping up. It's not quite at critical, but there are some sparks circling, which means it needs attention. If you don't keep an eye on it, it can quickly get worse. So, in this case, I just need to build one more moss filtration tower in any district I choose, and that should sort it out. You can always use the rapid filtration ability if things get a bit too messy with squalor. It'll significantly reduce the squalor levels, but you might end up with a few more sick workers. Don't worry though, I haven't noticed any major outbreaks of illness after using it. It's a quick fix, and honestly, the trade-off is worth it most of the time. Squalor is just one of the many negative factors that can create tension in your city, but the good news is that it can be managed, if not entirely eliminated, with smart use of your secret police. You've got 4 options: improve their standing, decrease their size, revoke, or cancel. I wouldn't recommend decreasing or revoking factions because you actually want to grow them. By increasing the size of the radical factions, you can improve your standing with them and assign your special forces to recruit more people. This pulls people from the regular factions into the radical ones, which is a good thing. Why? Because it's the only faction you can truly influence, and with more people under your sway, you've got more control over how things play out. Right, here we are again with another spin of Winter Home. Pretty much like the one we tackled before, but this time the stakes are cranked up a notch. You'll be frostbreaking as usual, but watch out for those danger zones marked by the Jolly Roger, telling you where the toxic gas leaks are causing chaos. Your mission: frostbreak left and right, getting yourself closer to those gas outbursts. Once you're there, you'll need to rig up an automated system to trap all that nasty gas. Top priority: build those 3 filtration districts to keep the city ticking over smoothly, or things could get real messy. Honestly, it's all a doddle, as long as you're not getting sidetracked by someone shouting, "Lunch is ready," right when you're in the thick of it. Typical? Just when you're saving Winter Home from disaster, someone wants a tea break. Once you've built everything, this is your finish line, onward to becoming the captain. And remember, captain is the key to everything. It's the only way to happily build your city without getting booted from office. So, all hail the captain. Now's the time to reinforce your rule, my dear citizens, and secure your place at the top. And just like that, a new empire was born. Well, maybe not an empire, but a slightly chilly utopia where I call the shots. It's all smooth sailing from here, except for the whole surviving the frozen wasteland bit. The biggest challenge after that, it pretty much diminishes. The game becomes surprisingly relaxing as you stack up your stockpiles and watch your pockets fill with everything you need. You'll be sitting there, feet up, in relax mode, with more resources than you know what to do with. Just one thing after that. Once you've got your rules secured, you'll need to build 2 new districts for the opposing factions. It's like separating radicals from the rest of society. 2 separate districts to keep them from kicking off. Right now, I've got 2 opposing factions, and I've got to build both districts for them. You won't see this in Utopia mode. It's just something that happens in Scenario 1, sort of the last thing on the list to do. It's not rocket science, though. Just slap the districts down and keep the factions well away from each other, and you're good to go. Easy peasy, mates. All you've got to do is head over to the districts, and here's where Frostpunk 2 really stands out from the first game. Everything's run through districts now, with loads of functions activated in them. So Just navigate to Pilgrim Enclave, activate the relocation, and job done. They'll move out, and that's the end of the game. Now let's dive into the bonus content, Endless Mode, where you're free to build and develop without any storyline constraints. You can choose from a few different scenarios and starting locations, each with its own unique resource availability and challenges. Not only can you select how scarce or abundant your resources are, but you can also pick the factions that'll shape your gameplay. Now, here's a tip from me. Don't make the same mistake I did. I chose a city location based on its geothermal sources, thinking I'd hit the jackpot, but I completely overlooked the fact that I needed the right workers to manage the setup. So there I was, stuck with a load of technical progress voters and no ability to actually make the city livable. Lesson learned: always check your starting resources and requirements before diving in. Right now, I'm sitting comfortably as captain with 5 factions supporting me, including the Thinkers faction, who've proven to be incredibly useful. I've got a surplus of everything, 16,000 prefab, a solid stockpile of food, and heat stamps to spare. With a geothermal source keeping my city warm year-round, the gameplay has become pretty straightforward. That's exactly what you're aiming for: efficiency, resources and warmth, with all the right functions supporting you along the way. Just to remind you, one of the key things in Endless Mode is managing radical factions, and let me tell you, it's all about the secret police. I started out with around 6,185 members here as Proteans, one of the radical groups, and through constant promotion and assigning the secret police, I managed to grow their numbers to nearly 35 to 36% of the entire population. It's all about playing the long game and using the secret police to push their agenda. These guys are pretty invaluable. For me, they're the backbone of my healthcare system, serving as surgeons and making sure no one stays ill for long. In fact, I've got 0 ill population thanks to them. So, once again, if you're looking to manage your factions efficiently, the secret police are your best friends. It's a backbone of everything in the game. Right, the second most important thing in Frostpunk 2 is exploring Frostland and managing the Extraction Stronghold, both of which are supported by the Machinist Force. At the moment, this faction controls about 15% of my city, and their influence has massively increased the efficiency of my outposts. That's the key, using them to expand your branches across Frostland, boosting resource production, and then sending the surpluses back to the city. If you manage it well, you'll find that this faction's contribution is a real gem, helping you keep your city thriving while your outposts do the heavy lifting. My second radical faction, the Legionnaires, came up with a bold idea that I initially doubted but ultimately proved to be highly efficient. They suggested a plan to significantly boost the city's workforce while using minimal resources, and it worked like a charm. With just 30 oil, you can add a workforce of 1,600. It's an absolute steal and a crucial move for city development. You can assign this workforce to your industrial district, and if you have 2 factories up and running, that's 3,200 workers for free. This strategy supercharges production, making it a must for keeping your city thriving. The Legionnaires might be a radical group, but their ideas can really push things forward. Alright, so here's where things stand. The Foragers, one of the original factions from the city's foundation, once made up a solid 40 to 42% of the population, but now they've dwindled down to just 13%. Why? Because I've been strategically reassigning their members to more radical groups using my secret police. Now they barely have any influence over city politics. So currently, I'm using what's left of the Foragers to help research one of the key elements for this phase of the game. The important thing to remember is to check everything carefully. Each faction's influence can either benefit or hinder your progress. That's what makes the game so engaging. It's all about balancing your current situation with your future plans, constantly adjusting to find the most efficient way forward. And the third most important thing to prioritize is deep mining. This technology is an absolute game changer because it provides infinite resources. Trust me, the resources you start with will run out faster than you expect, leaving you in a tough spot. That's why it's critical to research and build deep mining as early as possible. With this in place, you won't have to worry about running out of key materials, and it'll keep your city thriving in the long run. At the end of each of the 3 development lines for your city, you'll unlock key updates, and by far the most valuable one is the automatons. They are easily the best outcome from all 3 paths. Another option is the algorithms, but honestly, I wouldn't get too excited about the population growth feature, as the population tends to grow quickly on its own. As for the other choices, I haven't explored the decreased diseases option, and frankly, the accelerated research function isn't particularly useful at this stage. With 2 or 3 research institutes already up and running, this boost doesn't add much value to your progress. And as I just showed, the automated freight dock and Vanguard logistic bay are 2 of the most useful structures for managing logistics and expeditions in Frostland. These setups streamline resource transportation and improve overall efficiency, making them essential for any long-term success in the game. Handling logistics between your cities and settlements can be quite a complicated task. While some settlements will provide you with surplus resources, others will be in constant need of supplies. The key thing to remember is that your main city acts as the central hub. Everything gets funneled through the city. Resources come in from the settlements and are then distributed accordingly. So, make sure to keep an eye on the flow, ensuring that your city's stockpiles are managed efficiently, as it's the lifeline connecting all your settlements. Let me show you my coal mine settlement, which has been fully upgraded and now supplies me with 750 units of coal. The best part? You can ship that coal directly to any of your cities via the Skyway, making resource distribution incredibly flexible. These settlements are practically self-sufficient. No need for constant management. They handle themselves, sending resources to wherever you need them, freeing you up to focus on the bigger picture. Of course, it's not just coal that you'll be managing. For example, I also have 600 units of materials coming in from my Imperial smelter and from my extraction stronghold, the development I showed you earlier. I'm getting a 150 plus resource modifier. These extra supplies from different settlements really boost your overall resource pool, making it easier to keep your city thriving without constant juggling of materials. Now, let's talk about servitude. It's supposed to crank up the workforce pressure, and sure, it's effective, but let's be honest, it feels a bit like slipping back into medieval times. I mean, come on, it's like I turned my citizens into a free labour force with a shiny work harder badge. Efficient? Absolutely. But there's a tiny part of me that wonders if I've accidentally created a new age of fancy slavery. So it works, but maybe don't tell your citizens that part. Now, for your donations, well, that's a bit of an odd one, isn't it? It's like setting up a fund to reward women for donating their kids. Not exactly the wholesome feature I was expecting in the game. Then there are the labour camps, which make it feel like you're managing a bureaucratic nightmare while trying to keep your city afloat. But let's get to the real star of the show, the Automaton swarm. Once you've got these bad boys up and running, they'll crank up productivity across your city like nothing else. But remember, choosing this path means you're fully committed. There's no turning back. Once you head down this road, it's all gears, no brakes. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Thanks for sticking around. Hope you enjoyed it. If you've got any questions or thoughts, just drop them in the comments and I'll get back to you.